everybody, this is Robin with Creative2xmom, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the books we read in the month of October. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Robin and this is Creative2xmom. This channel is all about homeschooling, parenthood, and thriving in the day-to-day. And today's video is going to be about some really good books. Life has been crazy lately, so I am filming in my car today as I am running kids around and doing errands. It's just been the only chance I have. But I wanted to share with you what we read because there were some good ones, and then there were a few things that I'm still on the fence about. So I'm going to start with the books that I personally read in the month of October. And the first one was Thursday's Child by Noelle Streatfeild. Now, I have never read any of Noelle Streatfeild's books before, but this was a republication that is being re-released, and I was asked to be on the launch team, and so I thought, sure, why not? I think a lot of us have heard that name from You've Got Mail. Meg Ryan happens to mention the Shoe series, and I would love to read those. But this story is about a little girl named Margaret, who is an orphan, but she is kind of a proud little girl. She was left at the church steps with some very nice clothing, and she's always been given enough money every Christmas to cover her expenses. Until one year, the money stops coming, and they have to put her in the orphanage because nobody can afford to take her in. Throughout this whole journey, she meets a couple of friends, and she happens to get on the bad side of the matron. It's partially the matron's fault, but partially Margaret's fault as well, just because of some of her character flaws. They don't get along. So she and these friends that she has made decide that they're going to leave the orphanage. Through a string of events, some things happen that they feel like they are forced to leave. And it's all about the adventure that they go on of trying to find a safe place to be, trying to find family. It's a really cute little book. I have to say, when you think children's books, sometimes you think immature. At least for me, I do. I think, well, that was good for that age. But this was one of those that I think could easily be a family read aloud because it still kept me interested and engaged throughout the whole thing. It's very well written. And after having read this one, I will definitely be looking for more titles by this author. I know that there's at least one more, a sequel to Thursday's Child as well, and then there's of course the Shoe series. So I will be looking for more titles by Noelle Streatfeild. Like I mentioned, this was a re-release, and so I was asked to be on the launch team. I'm going to link my full review down below in case you're interested. Definitely a book that I would read with my kids. In fact, I have assigned it to my 10-year-old and he's almost done. It's a little boy, and I wasn't sure with the main character being a girl, but there has been enough action and adventure that he has really stayed engaged with this book. After that, I picked up Bounced and Barefoot. It was a library book, so I've already had to return it, but I will insert a picture right here. This is a book that has been on my to-read list for quite some time. I happened to hear about it through other parenting vloggers and thought I would check it out. And it's one of those books I really wish I would have had in my younger parenting years. And this is the thing, it's a book a lot about the neurological development, the physical development of a child, and why it is so important to get them out in nature, to get them challenging themselves physically, and all of the emotional and mental things that can be enhanced, all the growth that can come from that. Not just physically, not just the balance and the strength and the core strength that comes from all of that, but also the confidence and a lot of the brain wiring that comes as well. I was really impressed by the research in this book and how well examined the subject is. I think it's one of those things that we don't touch on enough, is how being outside and discovering and having that free play really feeds into the whole health of a child. I really wish I would have had this one when my kids were younger. Even now I see where it could apply to my preteens and teenagers, but I think having started with this basis would have been really beneficial. It's one of those books that I was thinking about my sister-in-law. She has a 1-year-old, and how much I would want her to have the information that's in this book, just because it's not very well presented most of the time. This author presented it really well, but I feel like it's one of those topics we don't talk about a whole lot. So if you have younger kiddos, even probably under 11, I would say check it out. There is not just the premise of why we do this, which I appreciate the author spent a lot of time on that, but also spends a lot of time on the practicalities of it. Okay, so if this is what you're working on with your child, here are some things practically that you can do to help develop that. So the next book I read was Through the Gates of Splendor. This is by Elizabeth Elliot. I have heard so many good things about Elizabeth Elliot, but I've never read one of her books. So I went on my library website, and this was the only one that we had, which I was a little bit bummed. This is the story, if you have ever heard of Jim Elliot or Nate Saint, whose story is told in The End of the Spear. This is a group of 5 missionary men who worked together in South America and were killed as they were reaching out to some of the local tribes. So this is Jim Elliot's wife's point of view of his story, sort of their love story, how they met, how they become involved with each other, and what her journey was into this missionary field and what her perspective was of those events. It was a very well publicized news event at the time. And so she was also under a lot of, maybe under the microscope of just how she was going to handle everything that transpired. This was an updated anniversary edition, I think. So there is some updated information in the back. For me, it was one of those books that, as I knew what was going to happen, because it was such a well-known story, I really, and the buildup of the story, could feel the emotion behind the author. And she's very honest about her husband and his commitment to the mission field, his commitment to the people that he didn't know, and that in turn was her commitment to this mission as well. Very challenging story. I've suddenly somehow fallen into wanting to read biographies lately, and this is one of those that I would say if you're a biography reader, this one should be on your list. After that, I stuck with the biography theme and I picked up Gifted Hands by Ben Carson. Now, I didn't know a whole lot about Ben Carson prior to probably 2015 when he was running for the presidential nomination, and he really impressed me in how he measures his words. He's not very fanatical, at least from what I've seen of him, but he really thinks through what he's going to say, and so that really impressed on me, and I wanted to pick up his biography. And this goes through a lot. I didn't know a whole lot about his background. Bits and pieces, had heard that it was a rough start, and he shares how he was just not a real great student, didn't really apply himself, kept switching back and forth from school. So one moment he would feel like he was doing really well, the next moment he'd be knocked down and be discouraged, and how that really challenged him to be diligent until he found, you know, his drive and his motivation, and how he came into the field of being a brain surgeon. Very, very interesting. And he constantly is putting it back on the Lord of, you know, this was the gift I was given. This is how the Lord walked me through this. This is what the Lord was doing in my life at the time. And so I really appreciate about that. I mentioned in my Goodreads review that it was simple writing. And somebody challenged me on that. And I think what I was trying to say at the time was there are some people who can write an autobiography and keep it very descriptive, keep it very, I don't know what the word is. They're just very descriptive in their writing. Maybe they have a ghostwriter or something. This felt a lot like how you hear Ben Carson speak. Very steady, very pulled together. And that's what I think I meant by the simple writing, is that it's just, he measures every word has intention, and he doesn't create this like creation of a story. This is just his story. It's very simple and it's very concise. So it's an easy read. It's a very easy read, but his story is incredibly inspiring. As far as our read alouds for the month of October, we had 2, and the first one was an audiobook that we had going in the car, Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. I have talked so much about Trumpet of the Swan. If you've seen any of these videos, you know I love that book. That is my absolute all-time favorite children's book. Not just favorite E.B. White book, but all-time favorite children's book. Can't get enough of that one. That's probably the 7th or 8th time I've either read it to the kids, heard it on audiobook. I could go on, but I won't. Trust me, it's a good one. The other book that we read was Hittite Warrior, and this was technically our read aloud. It was by Joanne Williamson. This was the book that I was on the fence a little bit about, and it has to do, we added this in because of our ancient history study this year from Story of the World, but it has to do with this young boy who is captured and he travels all over, and just the people that he meets in the ancient world. He meets the Canaanites, he meets Egyptians. It has to do with so many people, and trying to figure out, does he fit? Is his loyalty to the Canaanites? Is his loyalty to the Hebrews? Where does he fit? Because he made a promise to his father to go on this journey, and he's realizing that in his heart he's conflicted about who he should be with and who he should be helping, but yet at the same time he made the promise to his dad, and so that adds to the conflict as well. It's sort of a man against himself, against his own emotions situation. It was okay. It was a little brutal at times. It was a little graphic at times. There were sometimes I thought, why am I reading this? But to fit in with the ancient history study, it really was a good compliment. I just don't feel like there was a great resolution, quote unquote, happy ending in the end. It was kind of like life. I would say it's similar in style to Maru. What was it, Maru? We read it last month. I will link it below. In that there wasn't this like relief at the end of the book as much as it is, this is just life, and life continues from here. So I don't know how I feel about that one. Leave me a comment below if you've read it. I'm curious what everyone else's thoughts are. So what am I continuing for the month of November? I've already started Divine Disruption by Tony Evans. That's going to be a review book. I'm not very far into it, so I don't have any impressions of that one just yet. And for our read aloud, we are starting Peter Nimble and His Fantastic Eyes. This is one that I mentioned in our read aloud list for the new year. It was a recommendation by a friend of mine. So it's completely out of our box of what we maybe would typically read. I'm finding that to be true of a lot of the books we're reading this year. Very outside of the box list that I hadn't expected. So that's what we're starting right now. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you are reading in the month of October going into November. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.